Colm, you want to talk about tennis, and the US Open is underway. There is no better US Open champion for Donald Trump's America than Novak Djokovic. They are peas in a pod.
I mean, Novak Djokovic's quest to become popular has been completely derailed over his excursions this past summer. I mean, for hosting his own tournament, which was ill-advised in Serbia, then to contracting coronavirus, for his anti-vax stance, and then setting up his rogue players union, which didn't include any women in it. So PR-wise, it's not been great for Djokovic, but at the same time on the court, he's 25-0 for the year, i.e. he's won every tournament he's played in an admittedly truncated season. So he's unstoppable at the moment, and two of the big three, or what we would call the big three, aren't in this US Open in Rafa Nadal and Roger Federer. So he essentially has the place to himself, and he'll probably win his 18th Grand Slam, which will bring him to 2 behind Roger Federer. But in terms of the perception of Djokovic, it's at an all-time low, and maybe unless you're Donald Trump.
Yeah, I really hope that something happens that derails him, but you can't really see anybody winning. There's not enough strength and depth in the men's side of the draw, is there?
Well, you have Dominic Thiem, who beat Djokovic in last year's French Open semi-final. Now, Djokovic beat Thiem at this year's Australian Open final, but that went all the way. And then you have very talented players in Daniil Medvedev, who reached last year's final of the US Open against Rafa Nadal. You have Alexander Zverev, and you have Stefanos Tsitsipas. So for the latter three that I mentioned there, they're kind of the future. They're still not quite there. They haven't won a Grand Slam, any of them, and neither is Dominic Thiem, but Thiem's a bit older and seems to be the only player who has consistent enough confidence to actually take it to Djokovic, and he's the number 2 seed. So if everyone plays to their maximum, that could be the decider. And you never know. If Djokovic has an off day, maybe Thiem could do it. I mean, Djokovic lost the first set yesterday to Kyle Edmund of Britain, and Edmund double faulted on 2 break points at the start of the second set, and then Djokovic ran away with it from there. So you just can't give Djokovic any chances. So Thiem has to be 100%, and Djokovic probably has to be about 65 to 70 for this to be any chance of a different Grand Slam winner other than the big three for the first time since the 2016 US Open, when Stan Wawrinka won the title. And Wawrinka is one of many players who isn't playing in this US Open because of the coronavirus.
Benoit Paire was the French player who tested positive on the verge of the start of the tournament. Essentially, they've got a couple of bubbles going in hotels in Long Island, and then they're bussing the players over, and they're giving them their own suites to change in, as opposed to the individual locker rooms. So that's their attempt at replicating what's going on in Disneyland, Disney World, whichever of the Disneys it is in Florida for the NBA. I saw somewhere reporting that Paire is a flamboyant and controversial player. I'm not going to lie, I'd never heard of him before this. So what's his backstory, or why were people saying he's controversial?
He likes to do his own thing. He often says post-court interviews when he wins. He's often talking about enjoying the city that he's currently in, enjoying the nightlife and the women. He did it this year, actually, in the Australian Open warm-up. But he's like, the reason people talk about him is that he is talented. He's reached 3 of the 4 quarterfinals of the Grand Slams. So he does have some substance to his game, but he played last week at the warm-up tournament in the Southern and Western Open, or the Western Southern Open, and he wasn't playing well, and he wasn't feeling well. So I think, was love 6 and love 1 down, and he retired. But he didn't get it checked out for a while. Oh. And then a few days later, he got it checked out, and he contracted coronavirus.
Right.
And the problem with Paire is that he was in contact with players who actually are playing at this year's US Open. So there's a bubble within a bubble of, I think, about 8 players. And one of them is Kiki Mladenovic on the women's side. So she lost her second round match yesterday. And in her post-match interview, she was livid because she said, because of her contact with Paire, she had to live this life where essentially she had to stay in one room until it came to her match. And she was allowed out in court and then had to go back to her room again. So she described it as prison. Now, describing it as prison when you're in a well-paid industry is probably ill-advised at this time in the world. But her point overall sort of stands, that these players have absolutely no freedom whatsoever, especially if you're in that cohort of the bubble within a bubble.
So don't play. It's voluntary. Like, you know, come on, it's voluntary.
That's the other side of it.
You get paid a fortune for it. So Andy Murray obviously has a metal hip, and his indomitable spirit is still there. Is he? I mean, surely this is like. This is the last bit. It's like one of those traditional tennis stories where somebody does something in the early stages and you go, it's great, but there's no way he's going to be able to be competitive in the tournament, is there?
Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. This is his last dance. This is incredible. Like I was saying to Joe beforehand, that this is potentially the sports story of the year. Like, take her back now to January 2019, the Australian Open. So Andy Murray plays Roberto Bautista Agut in the first round, loses in 5 sets. So he loses the first 2 sets, wins the next 2 sets, which is exactly what he did in his first round match this year at the US Open. But unlike this year, he lost his 5th set at the Australian Open. And then after that match, when he was on court giving his interview, they played a video for him of a montage of his career and of all of his peers paying tribute to what a great player and friend he was. And it was basically a retirement video. And the camera was half on Murray and half on the video for the viewer at home. And Murray had this look of bewilderment, as if to say, first of all, I had no idea this is going to happen. And secondly, kind of saying, hold on now, I never said I was retiring. Because pre-tournament, he broke down in the press conference saying, I don't think I can play anymore because of his hip. But he never said he was officially retiring. He just said on many occasions, I don't think I can do it anymore. So after that Australian Open last year, he went and got hip surgery, got the metal hip. And he started coming back about this time last year. He's playing mixed doubles with Serena Williams at Wimbledon. And then afterwards, he was playing in the best of 3-setter single matches. He actually won a tournament at Antwerp last year. He beat Stan Wawrinka, who was a 3-time Grand Slam winner, in a final in Antwerp in the best of 3 sets. But this match, the first round this year, is not just his first Grand Slam match since that famous Bautista Agut match. It's his first best of 5 set match since then. So he lost the first 2. He was a break point down in the 3rd. He won the 3rd. He was match point down in the 4th. And he came back and won the whole thing. It doesn't matter if he loses to Felix Auger-Aliassime in the second round today. It doesn't matter. He's had his moments because that is incredible. The guy has absolutely no right to be playing this level of tennis anymore. That was 20 months ago, that interview on court at the Australian Open. And look at him now, he's just won a Grand Slam match. It's incredible. It's one of his biggest achievements. And this is for a player who's reached 11 Grand Slam finals and won 3 of them.
It's fair enough. It is pretty impressive.
It's class.
Okay, so he's out again. He must be out again fairly soon, because that was yesterday he won. So is he out again today or tomorrow?
Today, yeah. So he played on, what are we now, Thursday. So he played Tuesday. So play generally starts at 5 p.m. Irish time. So he'll be on about 6 or 7 our time tonight.
Let's talk about the women's.
It's decimated, sure.
Well, Serena is still there, and Margaret Court is one of the worst people in any sport ever. Like, and I'm including everybody. She's literally one of the worst people, and so to have her as the alpha of women's tennis, I'm on board Serena's train, no matter where it takes us, and I desperately want her to knock her off her effing perch, in the immortal words of Alex Ferguson. So go Serena, don't choke again. It looks like she's been good enough over several of the recent Grand Slams, but has been burdened by the weight of history for the first time in her career.
Oh, it's unbelievable, and it's 100% the mental block, because so she went on maternity leave, and then in her absence there was no consistent dominant player. It was different winners all the time of Grand Slams, completely different to the men's side. And then she returned after giving birth, and incredibly has reached 4 Grand Slam finals since then. Bear in mind that she is a few weeks shy of her 39th birthday now. But despite obliterating the competition en route to each of those 4 Grand Slam finals since she's returned, she's been beaten in straight sets in all of those 4 finals. So that's 2 US Open finals in a row and 2 Wimbledon finals in a row. So there's 100% a mental block. But what is going for her at this US Open is, as I was saying, the field on the WTA side is obliterated. So the top 2 players in the world aren't there, in Ash Barty and Simona Halep. The top seed crashed out this morning, Irish time, in Karolina Pliskova, who, it just goes to show how many top players are out of this draw on the women's side. Pliskova is #1 seed at this US Open. She's never won a Grand Slam. Her best result is the final of the US Open 4 years ago. So if everybody plays to their maximum, Serena should finally equal Margaret Court's record and win her 24th Grand Slam. She hasn't won a Grand Slam since the 2017 Australian Open, but of course she had that break after giving birth. So this is probably her best opportunity because the two best players in the world aren't playing. The defending champion isn't playing, Bianca Andreescu, who beat Williams last year in the final. So the field is open for her, and Pliska's gone as well. And Coco Gauff has gone too, the teenage sensation. She crashed out in the first round this year. So it's in her hands. She should win it. I would say number 2 seed Sophia Kenin will probably win it. She won the Australian Open this year, which we talked about earlier this year. She beat Garbine Muguruza in the final. She's excellent. She's kind of a younger version of Serena in terms of her competitive nature and her ridiculously fast ground strokes. But Serena should win this. This is her best chance. Bear in mind, like, she's 39 in a few weeks' time. I don't know if she's going to get a chance like this. It's the same with Federer. Like, I don't think Federer is going to add another title. He's out at the moment with knee surgery, or after recovering from knee surgery, and he's 39 as well. Whereas this is Serena's last chance. Like, she has to get it now. I don't think she's going to get it after this.
There's a French Open after this, all right?
It's ridiculous. It's so funny. So the US Open is the first Grand Slam since COVID-19 became a global pandemic. So the French Open should have been played in early summer, as is tradition. So they postponed it. But they've rescheduled it for 2 weeks after the US Open final. So it's caused consternation in the tennis world. So, for example, Rafa Nadal, the defending men's champion in the US Open, didn't bother entering the tournament because he had to choose between the two, because obviously there's quarantining issues. And also the fact that you're going from a hard court to a clay court. It's a completely different surface. There's no preparation in between. There's only 2 weeks of a difference. So Nadal said, look, I'll sack off the US Open, even though I'm defending champion, because I'm going to play my tournament, the French Open, and I'm going to try to win my 13th French Open title. And if he does that, which I fully expect him to do, even at 34 years of age, he will equal Federer's 20 Grand Slams. So it was an easy decision for him. But also Stan Wawrinka, who, as I was saying, won the US Open in 2016, the last player other than the big three to win a major. He made the same decision. He chose the French over the US. So the French Open, like, is if the US Open field wasn't already decimated, the French Open made sure it was. Whereas Wimbledon, they outright cancelled for the first time since the Second World War, because they actually had an insurance policy that covers pandemics, so they were able to cancel it. So whereas the French Open, they just moved. The US Open never moved. So that's what happened.
So lots of good quality tennis to look forward to, irrespective of what happens over the course of the next month or so.